sure if you're doing a real estate transaction, work with a lawyer that is dealing with real estate like predominantly in their practice. Will know more of the ins and outs, just like you'd want to have a family lawyer handle your divorce or your separation. You're not going to want to use a real estate lawyer.
All right, guys, my name is Rebecca Lynn Matheson, aka the Canadian Cottage Girl, and today I'm joined by Ryan Carson. I am subbing in for Matt to break down a few topics here with Ryan today. Now, we're going to start off by talking about things to consider when interviewing a real estate lawyer. So, Ryan, welcome to the channel.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rebecca. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you as well. Let's dive right into it. As a newbie investor, what are all of the main things that you would really need to consider if you're starting to interview and seek out a real estate lawyer? As we know, not all real estate lawyers are created the same, and especially as a real estate investor, you're going to be demanding quite a lot from your power team. Real estate lawyers are certainly one of the most important people to have in your power team. So what are some of those first things that you should ask when you're starting to seek out a real estate lawyer for your power team?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I would say just having a 30-minute conversation with your possible or potential real estate lawyer. Well, number one, probably just asking them, that real estate makes up a significant part of their practice. There's lots of lawyers that will, practice real estate law, but it's a small part of their practice. A lot of people will use real estate, a bit of just a occurring cash component, so to speak, just to help pay bills, stuff like that. So they'd be predominantly a lawyer in another practice area, like family law, for example, or maybe like litigation or something like that. But they know that a lot of aspects in real estate law can be handled by an experienced clerk. And so they're like, hey, if I can get 15, 20 deals a month, that helps, pay some bills and gives me more consistent cash flow than my other files do, right? So I would say, make sure if you're doing a real estate transaction, work with a lawyer that is dealing with real estate like predominantly in their practice. Just because we'll know more of the ins and outs, just like you'd want to have a family lawyer handle your divorce or your separation. You're not going to want to use a real estate lawyer for that, right? So that would be number one. But then number two, because you're talking mostly about real estate investors, I would actually go further and ask the question of, do you work with a lot of real estate investors? And are you a real estate investor yourself? Because that real estate lawyer, if they work with investors, and if they're an investor themselves, they're going to have an even greater understanding of a lot of the investor related, hot topics and file types and so forth. Because we have had clients come and use our firm, for example, who are real estate investors, and they previously worked with like a different real estate lawyer. But they ended up having to leave that law firm because their lawyer didn't really understand or support certain real estate investor type files that people were doing. Like one file type that seems to be hard for, I'll call it non-real estate investor lawyers to wrap their heads around, is sometimes the assignment files. So if people are getting really involved in or want their real estate investment portfolio to be assignments, there's certainly a group of real estate lawyers who are not dealing with investors who don't understand or support it. So I think just making sure you're working with a real estate lawyer, but then also a real estate investment lawyer is even better. And so we have myself and Sean here at the office that are both investors and real estate investor lawyers. We work with investors all the time. We're familiar with really all the kind of traditional and hot topic deal structures that investors are looking for, whether they're just starting out or they're really experienced investors. So those would be the two questions I probably ask right at the beginning. Not that there's like a right or wrong answer really, but it's just really, I think if you're working with people that know the industry, but then also are involved in real estate like day in and day out and have an established team helping them, I think you're just should be in better hands to get the deal done, right? And not just done, but hopefully get it done right, get it done thoroughly. Lots of people might not do full title searches. Some people might not suggest and recommend to their clients to do like off-title searches for multi-res and commercial properties. So these sorts of things, these nuances of practice, sometimes are not known by practitioners that are less involved in it, right? So
got it. So let's dive into that a little bit with the title search element. So you mentioned a couple of things there, off title searches, as well as a more in-depth title search on a residential property. So what would happen if we didn't do that full title search, or what's really the difference there in the type of title search to even request for your real estate lawyer to do?
Yeah, I mean, the on title search, which is going to be the search that can be done through the registry office, there shouldn't be too much problem there. Like most lawyers should be able to do a full search. We actually use a conveyancer, so we have three conveyancers on staff. So we find that they kind of go in and do an even further dive, like into the documents, mapping out kind of the boundary lines, access points, issues of access and boundary line issues with neighboring lots. So not just kind of looking at the PIN page, which is the summary page of like what's registered against title, but going further to, are the boundary lines compliant with what's been written up in the agreement of purchase and sale? Are we seeing any abutting land issues? Are we seeing any access issues? That's really important with any property, but especially so with the huge surge in people buying like short-term rentals, like cottage recreational properties. A lot of those properties have interesting points of access because they're not directly connected to like a city or provincial roadway. A lot of private roadway agreements or easements or traversed road allowances. So these sorts of things we want to make sure we pick up on. So we actually have a team of 2 or 3 conveyancers that will do all our title searching. So not only are we looking at the summary of the title's PIN page, which is parcel identification number, but we want to make sure we're getting boundary lines and access points highlighted if there's issues or concern. The other thing is like that's the on title stuff. Off title searching is really important, I think, when you're looking at a site that you might want to develop or is multi-res or commercial, so 2 units or more, whether it's zoned residential or commercial. So anything that's over a single family dwelling or that you want to maybe convert into a non-single family dwelling, we should probably do what are called off-title searches. So zoning, work orders, building permit searches, fire retrofit inspections. Obviously, I think it's evident why you want to. I mean, if the zoning doesn't permit more than a single family, well, now not only do you have to apply for maybe some building permits for your plan for the property, but you got to get a zoning variance because it's only zoned single. So you want to be able to do those sorts of things while the deal is conditional or while you still have the ability to do searches, because that could kill, whether or not it's a good deal for you. If it's only going to be a cash flowing and good investment, if you can get a single turned into a triplex, well, you probably want to make sure it definitely can be a triplex first and foremost.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you mentioned there the difference with some of the vacation rentals too. And I know you and Matt did a great video not too long ago all about cottage and vacation rentals versus residential real estate investing. So I definitely encourage you guys to, if you're interested in that space, go check out the video that Ryan and Matt did on that topic. And they dive deep into all of the possible outcomes and the differences when you're actually investing in those properties. So it sounds like there's a lot of different elements behind the title search, and it's important that your lawyer actually understands that and specializes in real estate so they actually know what to look for, especially from a real estate investing standpoint. Now, a lot has changed with COVID in terms of actually working from home or being in different locations. So the old school mentality is definitely to get the lawyer down the road that you can actually go drive the checks to. So what are some of the differences in working with lawyers, and what can some lawyers offer that other lawyers can't for a real estate investor?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so like a silver lining with COVID has been sort of the forcing of, technology and using technology to help do business now. So there's been some great developments there. I mean, doing what we're doing right now, a Zoom or a Teams meeting or a GoTo meeting. So a lot of our signing appointments are done that way and have been done that way for the last 18 to 24 months with, with COVID still kind of being around. We are now opening back up to do in-office appointments. But again, we're always watching to see what's happening with COVID. But there's certain types of appointments that just are easier to do in person, or some people just prefer it. But yeah, you don't have to, at least with our office, actually be located in Burlington, for example, where our office is. We've been signing up with clients not only all across the province of Ontario, but Canada. We signed people up while they were in the US or overseas in Europe and elsewhere. So really, the signing of the documents has become quite global. As long as you have the technology to be able to jump on a Zoom call or its equivalent, and allow us to see visual and audio representations of yourself, compare it with your ID, and then as long as you're able to print and sign the documents and scan them back to us, or electronically sign your signature. In most cases, most lenders and other lawyers are accepting all of that, in the midst of what we're dealing with COVID. So it's definitely become a lot easier to do client appointments, to sign people up, and really just all over literally the world. So that's been something that's been really interesting and a pleasant development out of COVID. In a lot of cases too, we're doing a lot of our banking through wire payments now, or direct deposits. So a lot of clients aren't worried about coming in, either because they physically can't, or because they don't wish to. And so in that case, we're offering a lot of deposits to our trust account directly. And a lot of the times people are doing it by a wire payment. So that's something that most people can coordinate, quite quickly through their banks. One kind of note of caution there: not all banks are equal, and some banks are much slower. Those particular branches with banks with branch locations seem to be able to do wires within like a couple hours to the same business day for clients. But virtual banks like Tangerine, Manulife, I can't think of any others at the moment. ING, I guess, or that's Tangerine. But a lot of those virtual banks that don't have an actual branch location, a note of caution is, if you do need to do a bank draft or a certified check or a wire payment, you need probably about 3 to 5 business days to get that done. So that would be something, just to keep in mind if you're doing real estate transactions and financing is coming from those institutions. The other one I just thought of was PC Financial. So we've got clients that deal with PC Financial, Tangerine Bank, and Manulife. Those are the main three that I can think of. Great banks, nothing bad to say about them, but in this particular situation where you're trying to do a wire or a bank draft, it's a little bit trickier and it's a bit slower. So it's definitely a good idea to keep that in mind and try to get on that as early as you can.
Absolutely. Now, from your perspective in working with a lot of real estate investors at your business, are there certain things that you would actually ask that real estate investor to have prepared, that because you do so many transactions, you just know what to ask, that maybe a real estate lawyer wouldn't necessarily ask going into that interaction with a new real estate investor? So what do you actually require from that real estate investor? What does your onboarding process look like for that new investor, first-time client?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main thing that we do that maybe a good chunk of real estate law firms don't do is we do have a welcome onboarding, like, file opening email that goes out to all our clients. And within that email, all the information and documents that need to be signed and completed are housed. So we try to get everything out in one shot to the client, so it's not, back and forth, or left to the last minute. We give clients a checklist of all their items that they need to do for, like, a purchase, a sale, a refinance, an assignment, etc. And our file opening and information sheet, if properly completed by the client, pretty much gives us all of the information we're going to need about them and their projected use of the property, etc., which will then determine if we need to take further steps on our part or get the client thinking about some other items that we've already talked about. So we try to do everything as proactively as we can right at the beginning of the file being opened up. So it does sometimes seem like a lot of information we're firing back to our client, but if you take your time and you read it and you go through it, you'll find that a lot of your questions are answered all in what we send you in the file opening, and that we've given you, like, a nice checklist and timeline to help you, keep yourself sort of steady throughout the process. I mean, I think just because we deal with so many real estate files in a month, we're dealing with a couple hundred files every month. We just know more of the ins and outs and some trouble areas where certain deals might get people into trouble. I think the big one with real estate investors is just, it's not about necessarily closing that deal for the closing date. It's more understanding, like, what's your plan for the property, and have you kind of thought it all through, from the beginning. So my earlier example of, are you buying a property and you want to convert it from single to duplex? Have you confirmed that you can do that? If you can do it, are there any steps you need to do, before you can do that? What are they? What are their costs, etc. Right? So it's just kind of, I would say, the biggest value we can offer, because we're investors and because we work with real estate investors frequently, is just kind of sitting down and asking the client, like, what's your plan? Like, where are you trying to go short, medium, and long term with your portfolio, with your one-off, like, closings and deals? We want to build a relationship with our real estate investor clients, whereas I think some real estate lawyers who aren't maybe dealing with investors so often are looking at them more as just trying to close the deal. Let's just close the deal as a one-off and move to the next deal. Whereas real estate investors, because most real estate investors are trying to buy multiple properties each year, it's a bit more of it should be more of a relationship. And so we're trying to build a relationship and not just have file-to-file closings, basically.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that brings up another thought as well, in terms of the thought about what you're actually trying to accomplish with with the property as a real estate investor, but also the timelines. So not just assuming that the firm that maybe you reached out to originally is going to be able to do the closing of the property that you end up finding. A lot of lawyers that I've spoken to recently are quite booked up, and we've seen a lot of transactions happen over the course of this season. So asking if they can actually service those timelines and actually hit the closing date that you've set out. If you have a really short turnaround time, maybe a super motivated seller that needs a 2-week closing, it's going to be important that you actually ask if your lawyer can meet those dates. Now, I know you guys have quite the built out system and you've done some of those very short closing dates, but what are some of the things that are required when we have a short closing date like that to actually understand the lawyer's perspective when we're seeking one out?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously just talking to the client and the lawyer about when is the closing date? If it's a purchase, when's the title requisition date? Getting a feel for like the process of like how early from the closing date would I have to be ready to sign documents and paperwork. We try to sign people if we can. Sometimes it's not always possible because we're at the mercy of getting insurance information like property, home insurance, and mortgage instructions in a timely manner. But if we have, all property information from the client, mortgage instructions, and home insurance paperwork, we typically try to sign the client up about 2-3 business days before the closing date, get all their funds from them ahead of that closing date. So when we come to the closing date, we're literally just processing money to and from our account and the other lawyer's account and with the banks. That's obviously how we like to work. That way the clients don't have to worry about things on the day of closing, signing, and it's pretty difficult to sign, request funds, and close all on the same day. Just the volume and everything that banks are dealing with nowadays. Most of them need 24 to 48 hours of process time with the financing. And so that's why we're trying to sign people up 2-3 business days before the closing date, make sure we've got everything else in the file. That's why we use a team-based approach as opposed to just having like one clerk work on like every aspect of 20 files, for example. So I've got a team that basically has, 6 to 8 people on it, and they all work on tasks for every file as opposed to just having a handful of 20 or 30 files and they work on the files. We work on tasks instead, and we just find that allows us to handle the higher volume more efficiently.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can appreciate that segment to your business where you have everyone specializing in one area where, as you said, the mom and pop shop type lawyer that deals a lot in family law and other things won't have that. So they're going to be working one file at a time in some of these cases, unable to necessarily move as quickly as somebody who, like yourself, specializes in working in real estate law and working with real estate investors and building out those relationships. And that's also a good consideration too from a first-time investor standpoint, is that if you are looking to invest long-term, building out that relationship with your lawyer is important, rather than just sending them the documents and leaving it at that. Get your documents in for sure, but I think it is important to have that good rapport working with your power team. And I love your point too about making sure that your power team actually owns real estate. Like if you're getting counsel from somebody who has 0 properties, they probably won't have the firsthand experience that you necessarily need to actually, when you're in the grind of it, answer all of those questions or get you to the finish line of some of those scenarios. So I can definitely appreciate the way that you set that up, and also to your point, make sure that your power team actually does invest themselves.
Yeah, I think it helps for sure. I mean, it just it should give the new client or the potentially new client a bit of comfort that this person's gone through possibly some or all of the same, things that I'm about to go through or in the midst of going through, right? Yeah. So, I mean, we're not necessarily going to have personal experience in all of the necessary real estate facets that people are seeing and doing. But, like previously I had multiple properties and they've been rented and or like bird and now they've been sold off. I know that Sean does a lot of buy and holds and he's looking at a lot of short-term rental acquisitions. Right now I'm like personally working on like basically just being a private lender. So those are the things that, we're familiar with. I know Sean, I think, is working on like more assignments as well, like just in his own personal portfolio. So more or less across the board, we personally dealt with almost, all of the various types of real estate investor matters that people might, be doing. But we've certainly seen it as, acting on the other side of the desk as well as lawyers. We're, counseling clients all the time about, buy and holds, BRRRRs, private lending, assignments, renovation flips, pre-construction acquisitions, commercial acquisitions. So we're pretty familiar with, I think, most of the types of real estate acquisitions there might be out there. And I think it, like our power team as well is all the same. It's same idea. So like our real estate investor referrals for accountants and mortgage brokers, home inspectors. I mean, they're all actual real estate investors too. So the nice part about that again is they're wearing their professional hat and their real estate investor hat, and they're kind of giving you the best of both worlds, which is, well, these are some of the real estate investor lessons I've learned over the years or over the course of doing deals, and I'm going to combine that with my professional knowledge of like being a home inspector or being a mortgage broker or being an accountant, and give you the best of both worlds, right? So hopefully if you work with a real estate investor, lawyer, somebody who's doing it personally, not just with their professional hat on, I think it gives you hopefully a further sense of comfort, but also hopefully you're getting that extra value and that extra level of relationship that I think as a real estate investor you want.
Absolutely. Yeah, I definitely appreciate that, Ryan. And I think there's a lot of takeaways here for a first-time investor to actually really make sure that you're seeking out the right person in your power team. Certainly, your lawyer is not an area that you necessarily want to like cheap out on when it comes to real estate transactions. Seek out proper counsel, seek out somebody experienced and knowledgeable in that actual field, not just Joe Blow down the road who has their law degree, but somebody who actually specializes in real estate law, who can make sure that the title searches are done correctly, who can start from your goals and actually understand what you're trying to accomplish so that you're taking down the right projects and getting everything in on time before closing. And ultimately seek out somebody who has done investments or has investments themselves so that they've actually had that firsthand experience and can guide you all the way through to the end. So Ryan, for people who maybe have heard some of your previous videos, or maybe this is the first time that they're being exposed to you, what's the best way for people to actually reach out to work out with your team?
Well, probably the best way to reach us is, me personally is through email. I mean, you can call or email me. You can even find us, I think, on some of our social media channels like Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn. So you can send us messages that way as well, both through the law firm and myself personally. And I do respond to those as well. But the best way to reach me is through my email. But once you've connected with me via email, you'll also see in my email footer, like I provide my cell phone number as well, so you can call my cell if you need to. But email is definitely the best way to reach me. It's probably the medium of communication I monitor the most frequently and consistently. We certainly try to get phone messages back within, one business day if we can. But it just seems email is the most frequent, most convenient, and most heavily monitored by myself and probably most of my team members as well. But certainly feel free to check out our website, check us out on social media, drop us a note anywhere. We're monitoring, all of the various different feeds, and we'd be happy to respond and work with anybody.
Awesome, Ryan. Well, thanks for popping onto the channel today. And I certainly look forward to connecting on some more topics. But for today, guys, we will put some links down in the description below for you to connect with Ryan and his team of killer real estate investment lawyers. And thanks for hopping onto the channel today and breaking that topic down. And we'll see you on the next one.
Great. Thanks very much.